My name is Frank Howell. I'm a former professor at Mississippi State. I think they should call them Americas down here in Hattiesburg as well. I'm a book editor by day, and I also work a good bit in amateur radio. A few years ago, one of the things that I've sort of focused on is what in Mississippi is needed. Well, there's a lot of answers to that. And one of the things was the notion of a linked repeater system. I left Starkville, went to Atlanta, was at the college board, wound up being involved with their, what turned out to be D-Star repeater system and how they work with Georgia Public Broadcasting as a partner and so on and so on. So I was very enamored with the fact that it took about 18 months from idea to we're on the air. And so I began thinking about the idea of an intertie in Mississippi. My partner here, Mike McKay, N5DU, you may know him from the Wednesday evening, or at least most recently the shift he did on Mississippi Section Phone Net. Mike is a practicing attorney and lives in Jackson and is current president of the Central Mississippi Amateur Radio Association, which is a 5-county club in central Mississippi. We meet at the Brandon EOC. So Mike is the secretary-treasurer of this organization. I'll show you our website if we have time, magnolia-intertie.com, our phone number and email. I've left some cards up here, and I was quickly told by one of your members that there was so many PhDs in here, they consider PhD piled higher and deeper. So I understand. I'm not going to go into what MS stands for, or BS stands for. So we'll
Jerry
keep
Lewis took care of that.
we'll keep it clean, okay? Here's what we'll talk about, and it will not be a long talk, or it can be as long as you want it to be. The talk itself won't be that long. We'll talk about what an intertie is, a little bit on linked repeaters in Mississippi, preaching to the choir here in Hattiesburg. What are some motivations and some concepts for a statewide linked repeater system? What is Magnolia Intertie's mission, objectives, and organization? Our technical development phases. We're a nonprofit. We think we should have a charitable outreach, and we have one. And I'll talk a bit about that. Where are we, and what are our prospects for the future, and what's your role and participation? And we can go from there on questions and that sort of thing. I'd like to have a good cut-off hose pipe, a set of shackles for whoever created this word. And then I can use that hose pipe in a way that you can imagine. What in the heck is an intertie? And you explain, no, it's not inertia, it's an intertie. Well, the two root derivatives of this from architecture, in any framework, a horizontal tie other than a sill and plate or other principal ties securing uprights to one another. In power systems and interconnection permitting passage of current between two or more electric utility systems. So in amateur radio, we choose that term to reflect some sort of linked repeater system. I have this slide in here because I get asked what that is. Well, what's our history? Now, if I've left anything out of here, it's just due to plain ignorance, so you enlighten me if I've left some things out. One linked repeater system has been a regional system called the Pineland repeater system. To my knowledge, and according to him, Jimmy Reddy has led that. And it connects several repeaters from Collins, Hattiesburg, and Laurel. Like any system, some are down at times, but in principle, that's the general area. And it was very important in the post-Katrina era because it linked the Jackson metro area to this part of the world, and as folks were going here and going there and going this way and trying to get trees out the roads, it was very, very important. Another one is the North Central storm chasers and spotters, and they got tired of the cell phones not going through, and they've kind of adopted amateur radio, and there's a gentleman up there who runs that group who's got a few repeaters and asking for donations and is trying to build one that's focused on weather. So if I've left any out, please let me know. Why has there not been a statewide system in the past? Why is that? As the kids in my class would say, what up with that?
Like everything else in Mississippi, north and south don't get along.
Is that what? All right. So are we Switzerland in the central Mississippi area? Where you are? Okay.
I moved from North Mississippi, so I can speak on both sides.
Okay, all right. Well, I'm not from around here, but I have voluntarily chosen to move to Mississippi 3 separate times, so I'm gonna qualify myself as a Mississippi
Good enough.
by choice. All right, so lack of cooperation. All right, that's, what's the, any other reason? Is that pure and simple?
Lack of understanding.
Understanding linking repeater systems and things like that? Okay.
Utilities.
Okay, technical stuff in this
To
town.
to change, you gotta have a desire for change.
Okay, so-
Nobody's created the desire.
So motivation.
Technical expertise and expense, I think are the two.
All right, so be enough. North and south don't get along, technical expertise.
Population between, cities, population gets big and then it gets real small in between.
So we have some sparsely
Yeah, we're,
popped into the area.
yeah, so.
Well, see, when you start thinking about statewide, that's a ubiquitous problem in the sense that do you mean geography or people? You know, there's all kind of ads out there. My cell phone company covers 98% of the population. Well, you know, you can get 75% of the population with just a few major cities. And you wouldn't even be a national one, for example. So,
Kind of misleading and.
well, it depends on what you bring to it, though. If you bring area to it, you know, C-Spire's going fiber to the home. Well, I live over on the north side of the reservoir, not too far from some C-Spire big wheels, but they ain't coming out of our peninsula. Why? It's not enough people per square mile for them to get a return on investment in my lifetime. So, you know, you get some of those issues. So it depends on what you bring to it. Okay. Why should there be one? I mean, you pointed out some good things. Hadn't cared, don't get along, expand, don't know how in the generic sense. Why should there be one?
It's taken a while to recognize the need to do it to begin with.
Okay. And so when you recognize the needs, what are those? What good would it be? All right, I'm gonna be the conservative Republican, so to speak, without getting into politics, or we'll talk about religion too. I mean, what's good with that? How come you people out there want to do this? What would be the answers to that question?
Safety of life and property.
Okay, so by communicating statewide, it would have eased things like the training. How about Louisville, when the hospital got blown away about a year ago or a little over, and their ICU patients, they couldn't communicate with Lifeline helicopters. They literally got out and waved the flag for the Lifeline from UMMC.
Well, the north and the south have very different geography and they've got very different threats. Hurricanes don't tend to affect the north. Ice storms don't tend to affect the south, but by having a north-south intertie, resources in the south could be called upon for a Louisville tornado or an ice storm. The resources in the north could be called on in the event of a hurricane.
Now the folks over in the meteorology department on campus at Mississippi State, you know, they have the state climatology, so they know about weather. They tell me this, you got a good point, but you know where the greatest tornadic activity is?
Right here.
It's between them, it's in the middle, it's from the lower left of the map to the upper right.
Simpson County.
Mississippi doesn't have as many tornadoes as many other states.
For one place in Mississippi has more than most every other.
But we don't have as many, but we have the most damaging of any state in the country. Now, why would that be? But, well, we have
Stability of buildings.
and we have
Because God hates
high level poverty, and we have a lot of, choose the appropriate term, trailers, prefab homes, mobile homes, et cetera, that don't stand up to those kind of things. So we don't have as many, but when we have them, they tend to be very devastating. Tuscaloosa has some too as well, and that's a continuation of that southwest to northeast tornadic activity belt. So even the central part of the state has threats, So why would you want to be able to talk more or less statewide? I mean, what would be in it for you personally? I mean, what would you do if you could talk statewide?
Provide resources for those in need.
Okay, but let's just say it's not an emergency on an everyday basis. What?
The nets would be so expanded, you have, get more people into ham radio, the more people you can get on the net and expose it to. a lack of exposure is a lot of it, you know, 'cause I had to research it out to find it, you know, and I came to this club.
Right.
And found all about it, but before this club, it was
Right.
all digital.
Let me ask, how many of you go to Jackson Ham Fest? How many of you only see a lot of hams around the state at the Jackson Ham Fest? Well, that's part of what we're getting at. It's the social networking ability that plays, and the ability for us to not be so locally oriented. I mean, there's nothing wrong with being locally oriented, don't misunderstand it. But to be able to build these relationships so that when it does hit the fan, you know the folks and you've talked to them. So those are some good, and see, but for an Intertie to be successful, these questions really need to be addressed, and I'll tell you why. And we're gonna get to the next slide, is because people bring different assumptions and different desires to that, and they become critical. They become critical. Well, I spent a year prior to Mike and I getting together and launching this form. I spent a year researching successful Intertie systems. I couldn't research the unsuccessful ones because, duh, they aren't there anymore. I did talk to some people who had started some, and they all gave different ideas, this, that, or the other. What mode, what this, you know, that kind of thing. But they gave a single reason as to why they lasted. Do not try to herd cats called clubs that we all know and love into a confederation of repeaters. Now, I was shocked tonight when Eric told me that y'all were donating one of your new fusion repeaters to us at Intertie. And I really look forward to taking it back with me.
Well, you can get your breath back.
I appreciate that. Now,
I'm a nice guy, right?
I've touched the nerve where every club operates in its own interest. Well, let's face it, right? I mean, every club, this gentleman talked about the black and the red lines on the budget report. We all have them. And so we all have relatively scarce resources. And so when you start trying to herd clubs together, and now you have the luxury of having more than one repeater. Could you imagine a club and they pull things together? The Central Mississippi Club, which is like 5 counties, bought its first repeater recently, a fusion repeater. Why? Very good price point. Well, it's had the luxury of having some really good repeaters that were given carte blanche access to the club, and they really didn't have to do that. What we might call the welfare model, that is somebody else pays for it, you know. And there's nothing wrong with that when that happens, but when you have a club that only has one repeater, you then start engaging it in something else, and that's where you get a lot of problems. Go ahead.
I'm hoping we're open for conversation.
You bet we are.
Well,
You bet.
when you talked about Jimmy Reddy, you really cut him very short. He actually had a lot more repeaters than that.
Okay.
And many of them in Poplarville, Lumberton, places like that had no club to support.
Right.
They had the coalition, 5 gentlemen, each
Right.
put their money together. Jimmy brought in resources, all the work, and had, I think, what, 8 repeaters at one time?
I think it was 7.
Seventh link. When I moved here, I moved from North Mississippi down here, and I immediately wanted to give some money to him. He immediately refused it. I don't want this open. You're willing to talk, but we control the repeater, and I now understand why.
Okay, good. Now, I just used.
But he
Jimmy
talked,
said.
he carried from the coast
Yeah,
all the way to MEMA, and without him, lives would have been lost.
you bet. You bet.
Big time.
Now, I had in there what he sent me.
Yeah.
And he was on our.
He don't
original- He was on our original board, so if I cut him short, it was his modesty, so forgive me. Now, this is nothing against clubs, don't misunderstand it, but, you know, as a social scientist, groups operate in certain predictable ways. You maximize your self-interest. If I'd gone up as a visitor and given you $20 donation, would you have taken it? You bet you would. You bet you would, you know.
It's 25 now.
That's 25 for a donation. So, but you understand, Paul, we all do that in our own self-interest. And so when you try to pull those clubs together, you know, Eric's a nice fellow, but when he's no longer president and someone else is the repeater chairperson, and now, where's that equipment at y'all looking for? See, stuff happens in clubs. They are like waves in an ocean. They change and move. And so when you start doing that, you are opening a can of worms that is a management nightmare. And they'll eventually go in those directions. That was what other successful interties, the Cactus Intertie in Texas, the Evergreen Intertie that goes all the way up to Canada, the Peach Blossom Intertie that's in South Georgia, which is not terribly unlike South Mississippi. You got a lot of small areas, you got some cities. So everybody said the same thing.
Is the one not still going across Louisiana and across the Gulf Coast?
Probably, and I really could never get them to return my phone
Yeah, well,
call.
the state funded that one. I know
Right.
who was in charge of it. Louisiana did, at least.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so Georgia has one that's kind of like that too. Bottom line is, see, the club doesn't own that repair system, so that's really not a club thing, that's a government thing. All right, now, what is a link repair system? Let's talk about some concepts because this gets important. I've studied computer networks and how we communicate via these modalities, did a lot of academic research back in the 80s and when the PC revolution was hitting. And so let's give a stereo, I mean, who's an engineer here? I'm gonna say who I'm gonna piss off first. Now, I'm a social scientist that studies science and technology.
I can get Ed on the
or
phone.
did. And so I'm one of the folks that the Dean of Engineering at the state, Wayne Bennett, would ask to come talk to the Honor Society of Engineers. So I spent the night in the hotel, Holiday Inn Express with a bunch of engineers.
Is Mark Jew in this?
Martin Jew, he's on board.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a good friend. All right, an engineer would look at a link repeater system as something like, it's an RF transmission system for longer range than single repeaters would effectively yield. In other words, let's hook up wires. Now that's the quickest way to get a link repeater system. Let's start hooking up wires. Now social scientists would look at a link repeater system not as a bunch of wires of stuff hooked together, but it's a socially organized means to communicate. That's why I ask you, what would you do? You're going to help people. That's basically what you said. Some people are going to get to know somebody in Senatobia, somebody's going to get to know more about other. See, that's got little to do with wires. That's got to do with a human to a human in a group setting. Let's design it to meet the human to human needs for communication flow. You've got a list of ICU patients in Louisville, and you've got a Radio Shack walkie-talkie on one end and another Radio Shack walkie-talkie on the other end, and you're running 100 milliwatts, and anybody in the world with a scanner that's open can hear you, theoretically. You go read out those patient numbers, their blood types, and all that stuff. Well, you might if you had to in emergency, because the heck with HIPAA.
See,
But technically, you know, that might not be the best way of communicating, right? So when you think about what we do with what I call the chip head mentality of engineering, okay, versus how we're going to use that information, let's put those together. How do we blend those in a way that optimizes how we communicate? So the organization Intertie is this technical organization, and a lot of us are fooling with Fusion right now. Is it better than D-Star?
yes,
Is it worse?
it's better.
Okay. So all the tweaks on whether forward error correcting DSP is better than a different approach, and so you know those are important things, but they're not the only thing. Okay. And so this technical organization and the social organization are equally important for the effectiveness of a link repeater system. And so what we've tried to do is to leverage these two dimensions rather than just go about hooking up wires. So the easiest way to create an intertie, get a bunch of clubs together that already have resources and get them to start hooking up wires. And you will have one quicker than any other method I've taught. And you will have a path to destruction quicker than anything else.
They'll get
And
pissed
you'll
off.
have people that hate each other as a result of it. And now that was the advice I was given. Whether it's wrong or right, don't know. But that's kind of what we're going with. Well, what Mike and I did was we looked at the idea of a club, and you know, when we talk to served agencies, there's the meandering that clubs can have by changing in leadership and things like that. You have a nominating committee and you come up with people. You think about what kind of leaders those people are. If a treasurer that can't add, Probably might be a good treasurer, but, you know, they won't steal the money, but they may not keep up with it. Exactly right? A secretary that doesn't type, doesn't email, isn't good about writing things down, may or may not get the minutes correct. So you think about these things in clubs, and all clubs go through ebb and flow of good leadership. That's why some clubs go out of existence, go dormant for a while, and that sort of thing, and others thrive and blossom and peak and that kind of thing. So we wanted to do something that would outlast us. If one of us got run over by a dump truck, it would continue on. It wasn't Frank's Intertie or Mike's Intertie or Joe's Intertie. When you get Johnny One Note, very energetic, does a whole lot of stuff, keeps everything right here, what happens when Johnny gets run over by a dump truck? It tends to all go hell in a handbasket pretty quickly. And so we wanted to create something that was a little different. So we approached it as a business. We created a nonprofit corporation. We became a 501c3 recognized organization with the IRS. Mike is now asking for what I call our permission to beg. I'm sure there's a good legal term for it, but effectively our permission to beg with the Secretary of State's office so we can begin to secure a revenue stream. We've partnered with the Mississippi Hospital Association. They are buying some fusion repeaters for us. They're buying a few other odds and ends. We are doing this like most towns do. Wait a minute, that's not the pocket with my money in. Let's see, where's my pocket with the money in? And that's what we're doing, see? And that's what we're doing. And so what we've tried to do here, we got a board. We've done it in a business-like fashion. Now, let me tell you what that means. And you hit the nail on the head with Jimmy Redding. We're benevolent dictators. We're benevolent, but it's a business and it's a company. And so we're doing it in that fashion. And we're trying to really make it as like business. So we will promote responsible use of repeaters, not only just in Mississippi, but be leaders in the region and the nation. Easy to say, harder to do. We want to build, maintain, and manage a backbone. Now that's something that when the rank and file ham thinks about repeaters, they're all kind of generic. By God, you ought to be open. You ought to not put a tone on it. How many times has Sarah been told, "Hey, put no tone on my repeater. You can't make me." And this, that, and the other. Well, that's kind of the one-trick pony, but you know, that ain't no way to run a cell phone system. You can't run simplex with your cell phone tower very effectively. So a backbone system is a special set of repeaters. It's not for everyone to use for everything, nor is it everything to all people, for one simple reason. How many of you go to church at 8 o'clock on Wednesday night? All right, well, y'all all go on 8 o'clock on Wednesday night on the backbone, aren't you? My point is, everybody can't have one time, one day, right? Now, this backbone is what we hope will be deployed around the state, whether it'll hit every nook and cranny or not, we don't know, we doubt it.
You have sites kind of
Coming. But what we hope the backbone can do is be a place that other repeaters can link into when appropriate. Won't be on 24/7, but when appropriate, can link into that. And we'll have a procedure coming. This is not a government system. Okay, it's really not a government system, nor do we want it to be. Okay.
Frank, let me interject.
Yeah.
We did talk to them.
Yeah, we did.
We talked to them about potentially being a partner, and it just they really didn't have an interest in it. They're all invested in Ms. Wind. My lifelong best friend is currently the deputy director of MEMA. We may have an opportunity to do some things with them in the future, but right now it's just not something that's working out. And you know, one of the things Frank mentioned, we had this opportunity with the other agency, but basically the deal was, we'll build the system, they'll be on our towers, you'll never have access to them, and we'll let you use it when we feel like it. I mean, that's not what their words, but when you digested what they were telling us, and we decided we could not accomplish our mission by going that route. So This will be a much slower route, but hopefully we'll accomplish our mission with this route.
MEMA, let me just tell you, MEMA said, don't call us, we'll call you. They do not have an understanding for the Racey's office. They do not have an understanding for amateur radio in MEMA. They report that amateur radio is being monitored when we've had people say the door was locked and it was off. So Robert Latham's not the whole organization. He may be the CEO, but when you go down to the middle, I've got relatives that work there. I mean, and it's a sad thing because all the money out of Homeland Security has a real key phrase in it now. Must have amateur radio involved. So rather than do battle with it and be political regarding this 800-pound gorilla called Miswing, we're not competing with Miswing. That's for government. We will work with government, but we're not owned by government or controlled by government. That's a fundamental concept of a difference. And we can talk more about it, but that's an imperative thing, which is not being ugly to MEMA, but it's waiting for MEMA to have a better understanding of what they want with amateur radio. Larry?
The other thing that's, I'm sorry, go ahead.
You've got potentially another way to do this. Years ago, back in the 70s, we were designing a backbone system to cover the state of Mississippi. Army Mars was starting to implement that. We had it on the ETV towers. Now, if you can get access back to now we don't have access now.
We do.
But if you can get access, or if you have
We do.
access to those ETV towers, you can
MVB,
position your stations on that,
we do.
and you've got your backbone.
Give me a minute and I'll show you. Job one is not emergency communications, according to Ronnie Agnew, who is, as you put it, is the organization.
You just used 3-letter. ETB.
He used ETV,
Educational television.
I used MPB, which is their current name, Mississippi Public Broadcasting.
Okay.
Okay, now, so we want to secure and identify the financial resources to maintain, update, and expand the Intertie system as needed. And frankly, as a taxpayer, if I had a bunch of hams coming to me and say, I want to use public facilities, I'd want to know what they're going to do with them. Remember Pogo said we met the enemy and he's us? Well, I is one, but I still want to know what we're going to do with it. What is it that we're going to do? And you have a lot of private business that wants to know what we're going to do because they sell communications equipment to government. So you have to nuance how you approach government and what you're going to do with them for the public good. And that's why I ask you, is the only reason having an Intertie for emergency communications. We have a lot of hams, ARL, I've done some of them, done a lot of surveys. There's a lot of people that don't care anything about emergency communications. They're just hams that want to enjoy it, Is that okay? Well, I mean, yeah, it kind of is.
No, it's not, because you can't keep it working. If it's only used for emergency communications, you won't find the problems, you won't find the errors with it.
My point is some hams don't really want to do that, and it's okay because they don't have to. So that's all I'm saying, Larry. So you have to look at what you're going to do with things. I think we kind of get bogged down in. See, remember I said at the beginning, what you bring to the table really colors how you see this. What you think ought to be is how it shapes how you look at this. And I'm coming to a bigger point here in a minute. There doesn't have to be one Intertie.
Sometimes there's an emergency and it's just one person.
There's a lot of ways to parse an emergency.
And, if you're driving down the road and your cell phone don't work, you've got your 2 meter, this is accessible, you can get help.
Sure, and that's fine. I mean, that's really not, well, let me kind of go on here, if I can. Secure the financial resources to maintain. Does that always mean government money? We don't think so. We don't think so at all. To work cooperatively with the official frequency coordinating agency for amateur repeaters in Mississippi. How many of you work cooperatively with the CERO? It's a struggle at times. Now, you got to understand, I was vice director for Mississippi for 6 months before I hit the door. And so it's been a challenge. And so frequency coordination, it is a little bit of a challenge. We had a period of time where you kind of couldn't get stuff through when computerized. but there's no RF modeling, you know, and so it's a little bit of a strain. And things have gotten a little bit better, but the Sarah model is one that probably deserves some future discussion over how that model works and how other states like Arkansas and Texas have all their data put out there free.
Steve Grantham was supposed to be here tonight.
That'd be wonderful.
Yeah.
He's no longer with Sarah. So my point of it is there are other states in our models where the data is out there in digital form for everybody to use, as opposed to being sold. We want to facilitate the technical training of all amateur repeater trustees in Mississippi and beyond. And I think some of you touched on that. We feel like we have a little bit of an educational mission as well to try to impact effective repeater trusteeship in the state. You know, some people know everything they need to know, but there's a lot of people also don't know how to get noise, you know, associated with the PL tones dealt with. Do you need a receive tone as well as a transmit tone? Does that solve some problems? There's a lot of things about repeating systems that we can all share with one another. Some people have had one can that went out and they need a replacement. A little horse trading with somebody else might solve that problem, for example. So building the community of trustees in the state is one goal we have for the Intertie. Well, you know, nothing stands still. You have digital, which come out. D-Star has been at that for a good decade or longer. You've got Kenwood, you've got Yaesu, you've got Motorola with Motor Turbo. If you go over to the United Kingdom, you'll see that D-Star is fading, just like somebody took an eraser to a chalkboard, and Motorola is really rising there, better or worse. We want to encourage innovation and related technologies. You know, we think of repeaters, we think of voice most of the time. There are a lot of other things that we can use in that toolbox. We want to support identified served agencies and their operations. Now, one of the biggest problems that I think ham groups have is they want to serve everybody. How many bike races y'all support in this area? Y'all do any support for bike races?
Walkathons.
Walkathons more than bike races? Do you have a lot of requests for that?
Yeah, average.
Do y'all have a lot of people show up and do stuff? Y'all have pretty good turnout for that? Not every club does. We had a struggle this past weekend, I think at the last minute for a two-day event, finally got enough people there, but one of the problems is people do things other than ham racing. And sometimes it's tough to meet all the demands and requests that come in. If you try to serve every served agency, we have some fire departments over in Brandon that they want ham in every fire station or more or less. Can you do that? Well, no, we can't. We work with the EOC and support them. We'll have to train you and get hams like, well, no, we're not interested in that. So, you know, there's a lot of things out there that if you try to serve everybody, you ultimately serve nobody. So this is our mission. Our objectives are to create a backbone system for the Intertie. Once that's functional, to have an application system for clubs and other organizations, including Salvation Army and Bob Latham's organization. What's the name of that? An application system for clubs. One of the problems we have as an organizational model is there's a lot of, hey man, you look like a pretty nice guy. You can get on our repeater system. Somebody else can't because they don't know somebody. That's not a really good business like way of doing things, because once the two people involved in a handshake go away, then those deals are off. It's a little bit like trying to find some equipment, you know, but you don't have an inventory system to. Sometimes, you know, there's a lot of this, that, you know, with whose cans or what cans are those, where are they at, where could they be? So we want to have a fairly rational application system for clubs. And what that doesn't mean is that when you link, you don't link at will. There's more of a structured thing. Emergency type traffic is job one. Another layer is APRS digifeeding. Now in this area, you've got I think Jimmy has at least one version down sometimes, but you have a very good digifeeder.
That's the KB5EE out in Summerall's. Super.
Yeah, it's a really good one.
So, you know, not every area has that.
I'm KB5E.
Good, very good. You know, when you go in some parts of Mississippi, you know, I taught GIS, and And first time, even though I taught that since '96, once you pull up a digital elevation model and you begin to look at the topography of the state, and I've built a 3D model for the whole state. So when you start looking at things, you think, man, I didn't realize that Morton was that high up relative to Jackson and Meridian. You shoot an arrow from Jackson, shoot an arrow, it's going to run into Morton. It's never going to get to Meridian, for example. So you begin to look at some of these areas, and you begin to understand why there isn't a digipeater, or one or more digipeaters, but they're not at a sufficient height to gain a good coverage. We have some issues about how APR system works. Some people kind of treat them as plug and play, and it's more of a plug and pray. And as Bob Renega would probably tell you, if you read the manual, it makes a big difference how many hops you program in and things like that. And there have been some balloon launches for folks that figured out how to plug and play and send them up, and they were flooding certain eye gates with packets and some things like that. So want to add and try to saturate digipeating coverage to optimize it. At some point, digital voice and data will parallel our analog services. We're buying a lot of fusion repeaters because it's hard to beat $500 price. We're not necessarily going to fusion, but at some point, if we were to have all our backbone nodes in Yaesu, DR1Xs or the successor, it's kind of a no-brainer just to say we're going to adopt Fusion or that version of C4FM. But we haven't done that technically yet. Here's how much of a Baptist versus Catholic issue this is. I've got a friend up in Tupelo. He used to teach at Mississippi State. I've known him for 25 years. We started this. He sent me an epistle of 8 email pages. That's a lot of writing when you get 8 email pages about why it ought to be D-Star or die and make everybody else in the state. And we've done surveys of ARL and showed about 2% of the folks had D-Star, said they had D-Star equipment. 26% have APRS by comparison. And when I told him, I said, Larry, that would be a little bit like going over to Rome and sitting down with the Pope and suddenly saying, you're not Baptist. Well, you ought to be. You're not going to win that argument, and you're just going to make people mad. So, Larry, we can't really do that. Well, this guy doesn't speak to me anymore. He took exception to something I said, I guess. So, you can get into stuff, and you have to kind of be careful because we have a lot of passion for certain modes, okay? We have a lot of passion. So we haven't decided officially what digital voice system that we'll use. How many of you are familiar with broadband HamNet or HamWAN? We looked at that. I was able to get the little Morton Club, Scott County Club going on that almost 3 years ago. They started implementing remote cameras and stuff at one of their town races, little small town. Their mayor became an instant fanboy, and they have been just blowing and going. And they may have been the first one to use that in emergency situations there in the state. That's been about 3 years ago. We are looking very, very hard at using the 5 gigahertz HamWAN model. The Memphis group is right behind Seattle in their development. One of their board members, Ryan Turner, is on our board. We plan to implement a stack of probably the 5 gigahertz, but the 3.3 looks good because we don't share that with anybody else. So we plan to have that IP mesh system on each of our nodes if we can. We can't do it on every one. Now, the cool thing about that is in Memphis, they're already linking D-Star repeaters, not by internet, commodity internet, but by 5 gigahertz IP. It will work with Fusion. We're going to test that between Meridian and Baxter, which is a little place south of Meridian, fairly quickly. So those are our objectives. We're a nonprofit. We've got officers, boards, and committees. 2 key groups are the technical group, which determines standards, the network control group, which is chaired by Mike McKay, that will handle pretty much application and linking and script requirements. And that I currently serve as the trustee for the system. We have some external sponsors, in MHA, and we're negotiating with MPB. We have an in-principle agreement, but you know, what was that lease y'all had with Pedal? You know, until that's signed, you don't have a legally binding relationship. Now, I've kind of gone through that a little bit. We have, as a charitable outreach, French Camp Academy. By happenstance, we found that they wanted an amateur radio station on their campus. The oldest orphanage in the state, goes back to the late 1880s, and we are working with them. We've had everybody from Bob Howell, we'll hear from Kenwood pretty soon. We've had ICOM. We've had a lot of folks donate equipment for that ham station, and we have just a terrible rash of riches in that they got money for a new student union, so we're going to put the ham shack in the student union. They're either going to gut it or level it, build a new one. So we've got a 50-foot tower, 3 beams, Martin Jews contributing a rotator and some things. So we're right now in a holding pattern, and we may be able to design a ham shack for French Camp Academy in their new student center. But they have 50 kids signed up as interested in taking lessons and licensing. And what a blessing we think that is. So we're providing leadership in that. It's on our...
Right, let me say something about that if I can. The French Camp opportunity is really unique for ham radio. We've tried to do a lot in the central Mississippi area with schools. We've done a lot of programs even at the middle school level, sometimes at the high school. Quite frankly, we haven't been very successful at that. High school kids today have a lot on them. They have a lot of academic requirements, a lot of athletic requirements. But French Camp Academy is unique because they have a large population of residential students. And those students are on campus all weekend with very little to do. If you've ever been up to French Camp, there's not much anywhere close by. So one of the reasons they're looking for this is an outlet for these children to have a hobby and do some things on the weekend, particularly those that are there a lot. And many of them come from stressed family situations. So it's a great opportunity for us. It's also a great opportunity for ham radio because we'll expose some kids to it that really might have the time to really get into the hobby, whereas most high school students don't.
Brad Hamilton back here has trained hundreds in his class.
Good. We're moving along with them. We'll be locating one of our backbone nodes at the 600-foot platform on their WFCA FM radio station tower up near Stewart on Highway 82. And so we look forward to working with them. You can't really read that map very much, but basically we're going to try to hit I-55 north to south, I-20. We are doing 25 and 45, and we're kind of looking in this particular area. MHA's put some money, I think, over at Forest General Hospital. Not sure what the status of that is. I think there's a V-Star repeater that was purchased for there. Is that up and running?
No.
No.
They're getting ready to do some major construction on those roofs over there too. All those tilted walls are getting tore out, they're going straight up, they're putting new paneling, so I think that'll be coming.
What-
Bid on it. So.
What happened? I mean, is there any particular reason the V-Star repeater's not on there?
There's some claims of some interference to
Okay.
their ground-to-air communication system, and they took it off the air,
I
and
see.
it proved that that wasn't the case, but
I
they
see.
never got permission to put it back on.
I see. So it's an administrative issue there with that. Well, maybe this could be, is anybody in this room directly involved with that?
I was a different manager. Walter Hart is in charge of it now.
Okay.
That's
Well, MHA looks at where they put their investments and things, and that's an issue, because obviously Hattiesburg is an important city, and it's an important thoroughfare for evacuation of the coast, et cetera, et cetera. So we're really looking at this area. We've got some coastal hospitals. We're looking at, what's the McHenry, sorry, thank you. The McHenry Tower is one that our node would easily reach the coast, but we're looking at hospital rooftops.